Man, oh man, do I love the hockey season. You know how normally throughout the summer I would say things like, hey, there isn't really too much to talk about, it's completely dead in terms of the news, so I have to try to find whatever topics there are and make videos on that, and it usually goes pretty okay because I find that I'm creative enough to make videos on whatever is there, but nowadays, it's a lot different. There are so many topics to go out there and talk about, to the point that I honestly feel kind of overwhelmed because I want to talk about Capo Caco and the Rangers and his resurgence. I want to talk about the Ottawa Senators and the warnings that they gave out for Matt Murray and how Leafs fans didn't listen. I want to talk about Vancouver stuff because they're melting down, and I also want to talk about Matty Beniers. But today we're going over to the Montreal Canadiens, and we're talking about a guy whose name has been mentioned in passing quite a few times, and we have made a few dedicated videos about him over the years. But when it comes to this update, man oh man, you talk about the hype train for Cole Caulfield going out there and speeding through, the hype train for this player might as well be right behind his tracks. Let's head over to the QMJHL and the Sherbrooke Phoenix and talk about a Montreal Canadiens 5th round pick from the 2021 NHL Entry Draft. He needs no introduction because you've definitely heard his name before. Let's talk today about Josh Waugh. Now, Waugh, just in case you needed the update here, as we said, a 5th round pick back in 2021. So it's been about 2 seasons, or it's going to be the 2nd season since he has been drafted by the Canadiens, and as a 5th round pick, you don't normally go out there and expect a whole bunch out of players taken in this range, but at the same time, Josh Waugh is a guy who's had a superstar level of hype ever since 2019. The reason for that is because in 2019, he was the 1st overall pick in the QMJHL Entry Draft, and there was a certain level of expectation attached to that. However, his first few seasons in the QMJHL did not see him producing as much as people thought he would have been able to. Sure, he had 44 points in 60 games played as a rookie in 2019-20, and sure, he had a combined 37 points in 35 games, split between St. John and Sherbrooke in the next season. But we've said it before, and we'll say it again here. Sure, even though there was a pretty good talent profile, he could shoot, he can score, he can make very intricate little movements with the puck that psyched out defenders and beat goaltenders pretty cleanly. He was great with the puck on his stick, but there were issues with his work ethic, there were issues with his engagement in play when he didn't have the puck, and there were very big concerns about his foot speed. Because of this, he was taken in the 5th round, and the season after getting drafted by Montreal, he absolutely exploded, getting 119 points in 66 games played. He was a double point per game player in the postseason, and he was over a point per game for Team Canada at the World Juniors, and it doesn't take a genius to go out there and say that getting 119 points in 66 games is good. So for anybody going out there and talking about Josh Waugh and the profile that he had, everybody in Montreal was talking about, hey, there are some good prospects that apparently could be steals based off of where they were drafted and how good they've been so far. Add to this the Canadiens prospect tournament that took place earlier this summer, and you have the preseason as well, where Josh Waugh was kind of in and out. And sure, while he was a player that was going out there and making some good reads, he definitely saw the playmaking, the passing, the offensive vision at play. He definitely wasn't an NHL caliber player just yet. And this season, the guy's just turned 19 years old, so he's not eligible to play in Laval. He got sent back to the Sherbrooke Phoenix, and lo and behold, he's gone out there and started torching the QMJHL once again. He was the undisputed top QMJHL point guy last season with his 119 points. However, this season, he isn't number 1 in points nor points per game. In fact, for both of these categories, he happens to be 2nd, and it's kind of interesting when you look at who is on top of him in both respects. That doesn't mean that he's not producing. He is. It's just there are a lot of other guys in the queue that have superstar numbers as well. Josh Waugh so far in his Draft Plus 2 season with the Sherbrooke Phoenix, in 7 games played, has 6 goals, 11 assists for 17 total points. He is at a 2.4 points per game. And it's kind of funny because the QMJHL, Justin Gill, also for Sherbrooke, Ethan Gauthier, also of Sherbrooke, these guys have 2 more games played than Josh Waugh, and they're at 21 and 16 points respectively, so even though Josh Waugh is 2nd in this ranking, he is the guy with the fewest amount of games played, so he's got to step up on both of his teammates when it comes to points per game. But when it comes to the total points per game number, Jordan Dumais of the Halifax Mooseheads, Columbus Blue Jackets prospect, that guy's got 13 points in 5 games, so he is slightly above Roy when it comes to the total point per game number. There had been a few other names popping up here and there that sort of fell out of the race recently. Jeremy Biaka-Batuka was a guy that we had talked about on the channel. He had 3 points in 1 game, now he's at 3 points in 2 games because he went pointless in the prior game. But going back over to Roy, the guy is on pace for 161 points in 66 games played, 57 goals, 104 assists. The reason why I'm going to go out there and actually use the projected numbers as something tangible in this conversation is because Josh Roy already produced incredibly well last season as an 18-year-old. You have guys in the QMJHL that are 20, some even 21 years old by the end of the season, and these guys normally go out there and dominate the score sheet and are top 5, top whatever in points. It's rare to see an 18-year-old go out there and dominate the league in the same way that Josh Roy had. Just to keep things up here, if he does get 161 points, 57 goals, and 104 assists in 66 games played, that would be one of the, let's say, top 100 QMJHL seasons of all time. I think if we look at the list right here, 161. Yeah, that would be around the range of, let's say, 50th overall, which is pretty good, all things considered. All QMJHL records aside, if you go over to the 2000s up until today, because if you eliminate all the 90s and 80s stuff, it becomes a lot more easy to follow. If Josh Roy goes out there and produces at the rate that he is at on the full season, his 161-point pace would be good enough to land him 3rd on the all-time QMJHL single-season point record since 2000-2001, behind Simon Gamache and Sidney Crosby. So, 2 very differing players of NHL stardom, but still. When it comes to Josh Roy, there are some highlights floating around online of him going out there and scoring some pretty goals, making some nice plays. He's able to drag the puck around defenders, freeze opponents, and find the opportunities on net. He's able to freeze goaltenders and shoot at 5-hole. It's all a really good mixed bag of offense with Josh Roy. However, I'm definitely not going to go out there and say that he's the perfect player. There's a reason he didn't make the Canadiens this season, and there's a reason he slipped to the 5th round. All the things that we had talked about his work ethic and his speed, I guess they're still kind of there to differing capacities, while I definitely do acknowledge that Josh Roy's overall attitude towards the game, it seems a lot better now than it had been in his draft season. There still is that concern about foot speed. A lot of Canadiens fans were pointing that out, especially during the preseason, that, hey, you know, Roy is skilled, he's really good with the puck on his stick, but he kind of has those cinder block feet, man. Like, he's pretty clunky when he tries to get going. He's never really able to gallop in stride and fly down the ice. He is not the fastest guy out there. So there definitely will need to be some improvements when it comes to pacing and how he's able to keep up, especially as he trends towards higher levels of play. But for right now, I mean, the QMJHL is giving him a stage to showcase his hockey-playing prowess, and he is taking advantage of that. Where we're going to see Josh Roy next season, I hope it's in freaking Laval, where he's able to go out there and play against some more refined, more mature, and more quicker pro hockey players, hopefully going out there and being able to increase his foot speed capacity. Maybe there's some power skating that can be done sometime in the offseason as well. But for Josh Roy, just in general, the overall production that he has had so far to kick off 22-23, it's been phenomenal. And sure, he's got 2 teammates that are with him at the top of the QMJHL in points, but as the season progresses, I definitely do think that cooler heads will prevail, and the ones that absolutely do carry the shifts, carry the load, and do the most damage will start to pace themselves ahead of the pack. Josh Roy was the #1 point scorer last season as an 18-year-old. I definitely don't want to discredit the idea that he's going to take the scoring title again this season, especially as a 19-year-old who had already played some games in Laval, the World Juniors, and some in the preseason in Montreal this previous September. So, talk to the comments your thoughts about Josh Roy and the start that he has had to the regular season. Am I really going out there and discrediting the efforts and the productivity of his teammates? You've got Justin Gill over there, as well as Ethan Gauthier. Are these guys a lot better than I'm giving them credit for, and is Watt being carried by these guys? It's not the other way around. Talk in the comments your thoughts if you've been watching any Sherbrooke Phoenix games. I hope you enjoyed this video. Rolls 99, and bye.